relationship between technology, institutions, and culture. And I want to do that because before we move into the discussion on institutions a little more deeply and come to the point of innovations both in technology and also in institutions. And in some cases we will also look at cultural innovations. So we will also look at cultural innovations which societies evolve to deal with various kinds of uncertainties. And one of the theses that I will present today is that when technology is inadequate, institutional innovations compensate for that inadequacy. When institutions are inadequate, we have found examples where technological innovations compensate for the inadequacy of institutions sometimes. The recent example is, of course, computerization railways. Institutionally, it should have been possible for people to get tickets reserved without having to bribe anybody, without letting anybody jump the queue. Correct? Institutionally, we couldn't do that. Technologically, it happened. So much so that Indian Railway was the only organization which would deliver ticket to your home at that time. And on the line, you could find 40 million people traveling every day could get exactly where they stand vis-a-vis reservation from where to where. 40 million people. There is no other system which carries such a huge load and still gives you details in a second. It was all indigenous. But we will also look at in our social context, in rural society, in urban areas, in the household sector, how the same relationship hold where cultural innovations, where technological innovations compensate for institutional innovations compensate for technological inadequacy, cultural innovation at some time compensate for both. To give in a lighter vein an example, in Denmark, 60% couples live together without getting married. It's a cultural innovation. Why? They said, look, if we are committed to each other, do we need a piece of paper to tell us that we are committed to each other? What's the point? What are you trying to say? Do we need a third party witness to guarantee our faith to each other? What are you talking about? This is absurd. Why should we need a guarantee of our relationship from a third party? Whosoever it may be, my friends or anybody else. And the society is doing fine. I mean, there is no major problem. Sweden has the same practice. Many Scandinavian countries have, in very large extent, done away with this requirement that commitment of a person to another person should require a third party seal of approval to say that they are committed to each other. If people commit to each other, that should be acceptable. So what I am saying is, neither institutionally the church and the courts could deal with the problem of all kinds of escapes that man and woman seek, nor technologically, no matter what guarantees you give, you can do online, whatever, that was not the way to solve this problem. Cultural innovation or cultural breakout had a very interesting way of solving this problem, at least in that country. So just to recap what we discussed yesterday, we said that when we design innovative products and social technologies or various kind of innovations, then it is like a word building game. In the word building game, Scrabbler, you know that Scrabbler, what we Scrabbler. So somebody puts A and you want to make ant, so you put N, and that fellow puts T, and then you say L, and then he puts E, and then he puts R, antler, or whatever else that you want to make. What happens in a word building game? Can you predetermine the meaning that you are going to get out of that word? You don't know really in which direction the other party will take it. So innovation or technological innovation or institutional innovation is a kind of a game of word building, where part of the meaning is with me as a designer, but part of the meaning is with you, the user. Isn't it? And if that happens, we have done something great. and I would like to come to that. The difference between dialogue and delivery. I can design something, deliver it. But if there is no dialogue, is it a participation? Is it a partnership? There is a partnership. And this point that I mentioned earlier, entropy is low when the meanings are partial. That point we discussed yesterday, I was just trying to recap. And we all know, we discussed yesterday why analogic learning is reinforced by, is based on low entropy or triggers low entropy, because metaphors are only partially situated in my mind, partially they are in your mind, and we bring all kinds of data or context to bring metaphors into reality. So a very interesting story. Once I was invited by Rashtriya Shala in Rajkot. Rashtriya Shala is an institution Gandhiji had established way back, I think 1922, around that time, 1924. So when his birthday is celebrated by Tithi, Saat Bara, Baras, whatever that is called, then they have a lecture every year. And this lecture has been given by very many eminent people, so I was very nervous when they invited me. I said, look, I am not in that race, in that line. Why are you? No, sir, you are giving a different interpretation, so why don't you come? So I was talking to my friends in the wing sitting here as to I have to talk, and I have hardly on any ground can I have the legitimacy to talk about Gandhi in a place which he set up himself. Oh my goodness, I do so many compromises in my life, and how can I speak on such a noble soul in a place of this kind? There's a sanctity of the place. I was struggling with that, and then I remembered something which says that if you have to speak falsehood, झूठ बोलना हो तो कितना झूठ बोलना चाहिए? तो बोलते हैं सोने में जितना खोट हो, आटे में जितना नमक हो. I am giving you the power of metaphor. How much of dishonesty you are allowed to commit in your life? As much as the copper or the other metal that you mix in the gold to make it solid. 24 karat gold will not make a jewelry which will hold. So you make it 22 karat or 18 karat, correct? So there was a girl sitting with me, Hetal, I think her name was, and she was wearing some ring of diamond, or not ring, earring of diamond. So I said, what happens with diamond? She says, with diamond, we have to hold it in even more impure material, because it needs much more stronger system to hold it. I said, I got the theme of my lecture tomorrow. So when I went there, of course there were a lot of ladies, gentlemen, they were wearing jewelry. So I said, the only reason I have the legitimacy to speak here is that unlike the gold jewelry, which you are also wearing, where the degree of falsehood allowed is only limited, in the diamond jewelry, the degree of impurity is much higher. And I have come to talk about thoughts of Gandhi which are like diamonds, so I can be much more impure. So I used that metaphor to justify my impurity and my lack of confidence that I was getting from my own conduct. And I said, no, I can say with moral authority that I have a right to talk about him because I am so impure. And you can't hold Gandhi's thought in a very pure soul. It is very fragile. So I am strong enough now to hold it. In other words, the metaphors have a power in which they can take you to a plane which otherwise is not possible. And our societies have known this actually. Our societies have known. They have given us measures. So precise sometimes, but they are very pragmatic rules of life. जिंदगी में कितना झूठ बोलना है तो बड़ा तरीका बता दिया, आटे में नमक के बराबर कर लो. We all know that we can't mix too much of salt in the flour to make bread. So you don't feel too guilty for making small deviations from the line here and there, so long as they are small. My young friends should remember that. Too much of deviation will of course create problem, but a little bit of it is human, as they say. So the point is that the project that we have is to create institutions for long term. We have a 1,000-year project. 1,000 साल के लिए हमें समाज को बनाना है. For 1,000 years, if we have to make design a blueprint or a map or a structure or a arrangement for running this country in a manner that it will sustain with the values that we all share in terms of human values, ethical values, then we have to create powerful metaphors. We have to invent new metaphors using new language, new idiom, new images, because probably the old images will still hold, but they will not convey everything that the society today needs to handle. So, one of the points that I wanted to make about the metaphor is that we were in Ladakh at the time, and there was a passage which I wanted to show you, that picture, where only one person can cross at a time. And you have to put your legs like this. The path is only this big. And if you don't balance properly, you go 500 feet deep. And I had taken my students there. And there's nothing to hold. Rocks are very friable. It's a cold desert. And there's no plant. किसी को पकड़ नहीं सकते आप वहाँ पर. कोई चीज़ पकड़ने के लिए नहीं है. So it's very risky, of course. But that was the purpose. I wanted to expose my students to extreme risk. And the reason was that I said that unless you face that kind of situation, your mind will not evoke thoughts which I wanted them to evoke, where the purpose was that when you have extreme uncertainty about what the next step will be or our next outcome will be, can we think in a manner that we don't think otherwise? So there is a theorem that was developed in past where I was looking at this problem, that whenever mind wants to exercise control, it converts a problem of uncertainty into risk. We know everything about nuclear energy. We've done all the calculations. We can deal with it. The fact is that we still do not have a way of disposing the nuclear waste. That's the fact. And we have no guarantee that the silos in which we put the nuclear waste someday will not burst and create havoc with the world. We have no way to find out. There is no guarantee that this will last for how long? 1,000 years. But are we going to survive only for 1,000 years? What about 2,000 years? And is there a guarantee that it will not burst in 2,000 years? We have no guarantee. There is no test that we have which can prove. But we go ahead. We can say, no, we know. We have made all calculations. You trust us. We are knowledgeable people. हम बहुत ज्ञानी हैं. हमारा अनुभव है. हम बता सकते हैं कि परमाणु शक्ति बिल्कुल सुरक्षित है. कोई दिक्कत नहीं. And when we want to disown the responsibility, we convert a problem or a risk into uncertainty. What could we have done? We had no idea. हमको बिल्कुल नहीं मालूम था कैसा हो सकता है. हमने पूरी सावधानी बरती थी, लेकिन ये हो गया. So even when we knew, for example, a railway accident take place, and we said, well, it was how could we have predicted it? Human error हो जाती है. अरे, you know that for 10 years Lalu did not replace the rolling stock, and the railway lines have been worn out, and the probability of accident was bound to be more. It was known. But no. So when we don't want to take responsibility, we consider the problem of risk, that means a problem of which probability is known, into a uncertainty. This is a game which is played by mind also, not by society. In our own mind, when I want to do something, I say, no, but I have taken care, don't worry, I will take care, I know. And when I don't want to do it, oh, it's so difficult, how do you predict? How can you put so many things? It's such a difficult problem. How can I change the behavior of the whole world? So this game that we play of converting risk into uncertainty and uncertainty into risk, how have societies played with that? And I would like to share. So one of the ways in which we deal with the problem of risk and uncertainty is that we don't take responsibility for everything that we need to do. And we acknowledge our inadequacy, our limitation in doing that. So we talked about knowing, we talked about feeling. Today and tomorrow we are going to discuss more about doing. And the idea is that when we do things, are there ways of doing things which bring knowledge and feeling closer? So that a question arises, but why don't I feel? Yesterday Rajiv was asking, but why don't I feel the need? I know what you're saying, but I don't feel the need for the change. Why don't I feel the need?